Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. About that time during the offseason where really trying to iron out the programs that I think have a shot at making the college football playoffs. And this LSU Tigers team, I think, checks a lot more boxes than a lot of people give them credit for heading into 2024. And although I know a lot of the LSU fans are disappointed in not getting a big body on the inside of the defensive line, I certainly am. It's a question mark heading into 2024. Let's be very real about this. Just because you didn't land a guy like Dominic Williams does not mean this LSU team can't do something special in 2024. Want to dive into what I really like about this LSU program. We'll highlight some of the questions, but more importantly, take a look at that schedule and see how the schedule plays out for this LSU program. Fired up to get into it. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. It's been a blast talking this program on the recruiting trail, in the transfer portal, taking spring football deep dives. I can't thank you guys enough for all the support you guys have shown. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, would love to get some feedback from you guys in the comment section. And without further ado, let's first take a look at the talent they have heading into 2024. Then we'll take a look at the schedule. You'll look at this LSU offense. There will be a lot of casual college football fans that probably want to write this LSU offense off because they look at, all right, you lost number 2 quarterback in the NFL draft in Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas. You look at this LSU offense, I think a lot of LSU fans that know some of the talent on this team, they don't have many question marks, right? You look at Garrett Nussmeier, and I don't think it's crazy to say he's one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC heading into 2024. We've seen enough from him to kind of know what he's about. And then you couple that with the elite talent that Garrett Nussmeier is going to be surrounded by. Yes, you lose Malik Neighbors, you lose Brian Thomas. You look at guys like Kyron Lacey, Chris Hilton Jr., CJ Daniels coming from Liberty probably would have been a day 3 pick in the NFL draft. You add Xavier Thomas. I think Aaron Anderson is a perfect fit in this LSU offense. I think he's going to get more opportunity. We just listed, 5 wide receivers that I think start on almost every Power 5 program across the country. Garrett Nussmeier is a damn good quarterback, and he is going to have a ton of talent to operate with heading into 2024. But I think the thing that I like the most about this LSU offense is the offensive line. I have been very adamant that I think this LSU offensive line is probably one of, if not the best offensive line unit in the country. It starts with the tackle spot, right? Will Campbell, Emory Jones. Those are 2 NFL tackles that probably would be playing on Sundays had they been old enough. I think they're going to be 2 probably first-round draft picks. I think certainly Will Campbell. You look on the inside, Garrett Dellinger, Miles Frazier, DJ Chester at the center position might be an upgrade from what they had. And although he didn't start as a true freshman for LSU, I think as a redshirt freshman, DJ Chester can be a guy that we look at and say, did LSU get better at the center position heading into 2024? And I think all of that combined with these guys have played so much football together for the last 2 to 3 years. You look at all the elite offensive lines back to Michigan over the last couple of years. Yes, they had NFL talent like LSU has. More importantly, they have played multiple seasons together. You look at this LSU offensive line, it's not only experienced, it's experienced as a unit. And so I look at this offensive line and say, I love the quarterback position. I love the wide receivers. I love the offensive line. They check pretty much every box that you want to see. Obviously, Joe Sloan, a phenomenal offensive-minded coach here. They check a lot of boxes on the offensive side of the football. And when you can score the amount of points that LSU is going to be able to score in 2024, you are going to have a chance to pretty much win every game that you step on the field in Saturdays. Fired up about this LSU offense. Now, you go to the LSU defense, and I think this is kind of the question mark. Now, if I'm going to pick LSU to make the college football playoffs, you have to expect some sort of increase in improvement from this LSU defense. And I think it starts in the front 7 here where, yes, you have question marks on the inside of that defensive line. That is by far, in my mind, the biggest question mark on this LSU team. You have some guys you feel good about. You're not really sure if you have some difference makers, but you do have some unknown commodities, right? Sean Washington coming back from the JUCO ranks. I mean, that could be a really solid football player for you. I think 5-star Dominic McKinley coming in the summer, you don't really know what he's going to look like as a true freshman. There's a very real possibility that he's a contributor for LSU in 2024 as well. You bring a guy like Gio Pius from the transfer portal. I don't think the LSU on the inside of the defensive line, I don't know if the depth is as bad as we might have thought it was. Now, do they have a difference maker on the inside of the defensive line? Probably not. That's probably your concern. But I think the depth is probably not as bad as we like to think it is. And then you look at the edge rusher spot and say, I mean, we got some guys that you feel good about at the edge rusher spot. Brian Kelly even said that, hey, we are pretty good on the ends of the defensive line. But you also have a little bit of versatility, right? You look at Savion Jones, Paris Shan, those are guys that probably could kick inside on certain situations as well. So, yeah, we have question marks about the LSU defensive line, but we'll kind of see how it plays out in 2024. You look at the linebacker spot and say, I think this is one of the better linebacker rooms you've seen, at least in the SEC, right? Whit Weeks played phenomenal as a true freshman. Harold Perkins Jr., one of the best players in college football, no questions about that. You have a guy like Greg Penn. I like this linebacker room a lot. I think it's versatile. I think he can do a lot of different things, and I really am looking forward to how does Harold Perkins get involved in this LSU defense. You have one of the best defensive players in all of college football. Can Blake Baker get the most out of him? Because you look back at that 2023 year and say Harold Perkins he wasn't asked to do enough in that defense. And he's one of the best players in college football. You got to let him have opportunities to really impact the game. And then you look at the back end and say, this was such a young secondary last year. It was a young secondary. It was a poorly coached secondary. You return a lot of guys. You add a guy like Jordan Gilbert. To me, I think it comes down to, can Blake Baker really turn around this defense from a schematic standpoint, right? You bring in a whole new coaching staff. Blake Baker, one of the best defensive coordinators in the country. If LSU makes the playoffs in 2024, it's not because they made a ton of additions in the transfer portal. This team is just as talented as it was last year. I think it comes down to, can this defense be better coached? Can it just perform a little bit better on Saturday afternoons? I think the talent is largely in place for LSU. This is a program that gets it done on the recruiting trail. Now it comes down to, can Blake Baker within this offseason really turn around this LSU defense? That's probably the question we have for this LSU program. Now, you look at the schedule, and this is where I think it's kind of interesting for LSU. You have that really intriguing week 1 matchup against USC in Las Vegas. 6.5-point favorites, I think LSU is. If you can win that game, I think you run the table your first 5 games, right? Nichols, you win. You go on the road at South Carolina. We have some question marks about South Carolina. It's obviously a hard place to play. If LSU's making the playoffs, they're winning that football game. UCLA should win. South Alabama. Now, here's why I say I'm kind of intrigued by the schedule for LSU. You get a bye week before you play one of the biggest games you have on your schedule, right? Ole Miss is going to be one of the best teams in the SEC. You get an off week, then you get Ole Miss at home, right? Then you go on the road to Arkansas. I think they should win that one. You obviously circling College Station, Kyle Field, on the road at Texas A&M. Another one of those toss-up games after going Ole Miss, Arkansas. But then you get another bye week, right? And then you're playing your second biggest game, and that's the Alabama Crimson Tide. And so what I think is really intriguing about LSU is you probably have your top 2 games circled are Ole Miss, Alabama, both of which are at home following an off week. That is about as advantageous as it gets in terms of your biggest 2 games. You're playing at home. You're going to be fresh. You're going to get some of your guys back. I think that's massive for LSU, where Ole Miss, Alabama, yes, those are toss-up games, but getting them at home after bye week, massively important for LSU. You go on the road to the Florida Gators, where, I mean, we just have some question marks about what they're going to be, especially late in the season. Vanderbilt should be a win. Then you get the Sooners at home to cap off the regular season. I look at this LSU team and say, I think we all know that this offense is going to keep them in a lot of football games, right? And I think the big question is, if we see just a marginal improvement from the defense, if this defense goes from being 120th in the country to 75th in the country, not even an average defense, a little bit below average, you're winning a lot more football games. That was probably a team last year that if you were 75th in the country in defense, you might be playing for a college football playoff game. You might be playing for an SEC championship game. That's how good this LSU offense was. I'm really intrigued by this LSU team. I think a lot rides on the defense. I don't think we have many question marks about that offense. We're going to see what this team is about. I haven't decided if they're going to be in my official college football playoff prediction or not. I'm still kind of doing some prep work on some other programs, but this is a team that I think checks a lot of boxes, has an advantageous schedule. We'll dive into it more. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. We'll talk to y'all later.